Welcome to the MHP CashFlow Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of mobile home park investing, real estate strategies, and building long-term passive income. Hosted by Garrett Terrell, real estate investor, mobile home park operator, and founder of Rocket Capital Fund.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the MHP CashFlow Podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Terrell, and today I have an exciting guest, Mr. Brandin Petterson. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about his story and how he got into the MHP space. Brandin, thanks for hopping on.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Long-time listener. Listened to all your eps, so appreciate what you're doing out there in the space, man. It takes a lot to get out there, get guests on, and ask the questions that you ask. So,
yes, thank
pumped
you.
To be
I
on,
appreciate that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, where are you at right now, living-wise?
I'm down in the sunny state of Florida, kind of between Tampa
Nice.
and Orlando, smack in the middle.
Nice. Good stuff.
Where
So
are you
you're
at?
in Florida. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona.
You're in the
Yeah.
Mecca. You are in, I know we're a mobile home park podcast on it right now,
Yep.
but you are in the wholesaling residential Mecca of real estate.
Yes, it is highly competitive here. There's
Yeah.
a million different gurus and coaches and tons of stuff here. There's a
Oh
lot.
yeah, dude. So have you lived
I
there long? Is that?
Yeah, so we moved here about a year and a half ago. Originally from Seattle, Washington. And we just needed sun and we needed to get out of Washington. So
Gotcha.
we moved
Say no
here.
more.
Yeah. Exactly.
I did the same from Pennsylvania. It was like I left in the middle of a blizzard. It was like 2009, 10 or whatever, and it was like snowing, and I had quit my job, and I just came on down to Florida. And I mean, I started in residential, but
Yeah.
15 years later, here we are, mobile home parks, baby.
That's awesome. Yeah. So tell me about your first mobile home park. How'd you get started?
It was kind of like it was around COVID, right? Everyone's got that story of like how they start with the research, they're looking, they're doing all that stuff. I had just started talking about it and like I'm gonna do this. I was pretty heavy into like kind of with your background, flipping, all that stuff. I was big in residential, you do it that long. But I got sick and tired of that stuff. It was so transactional, and I felt like I wasn't being rewarded no matter how hard I worked. With I always tell people it's like with single family stuff, you could be the best landlord in the country. You could get the highest rents. You could, you screen the best tenants, keep the prettiest house, but it's still only going to sell as much as Mary's down the road. You get there's no value for your hard work. And I got sick and tired of it, and the flipping was nonstop. So I was just like, man, and I had like wholesaled. It was like a little 3-4 lot thing, maybe 5, whatever. And then I sold it to this guy for like $100,000. And then I noticed, I drove by and he put a new home on it. And I called him. I'm like, what is this? And he told me he bought it for like $20,000 and dropped it on there, and he's going to get like $1,200, $1,500 a month. I'm like, what? I was like, how does this work? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was just confused. And then, again, wholesaling, I ran into a 26 lotter and then a 100 lotter, and I just didn't know what to say to them. And it really started piquing my interest to a point to where I just started talking about it. And then I got an ad for a mobile home park thing. It was a guy out of like Louisiana. I went to his little meetup / mastermind thing to learn about what he was doing. And I remember my wife went with me. She was back at the Airbnb, and I remember the first day I'm like, this is it. Like, we're buying parks.
Yeah. Was it Chris Rude's mastermind?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chris. Yeah, I know him.
Yeah. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
was like 2020. I think it was 20 or I think it was December of 2020 because it was right after like all the,
Yeah.
all that stuff happened.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. I almost bought a park from him in Florida, but me and him talked for a little while throughout the purchase. Ended up not working out, but there's no bad blood on either side. But he's a hilarious Instagram follow too.
He
He's
is. He's very blunt and to the point. He's got
yeah.
his own thing, but I respect that about him. So,
Oh, for sure.
um,
Yeah. No, I'm definitely a fan of him. I'll probably try to
yeah,
have him on the podcast, but maybe after a few more episodes, you know.
yeah,
Um,
it was
but
great.
yeah,
I met a lot of people. Did you go to one, or you didn't? You just were about to buy his
no,
park. You didn't go to one of his things. Yeah.
yeah, no,
I mean,
I
I met
didn't.
some good people there, man. It was, and you're in residential too. Did you go to any masterminds in residential? Any
I did
conferences or
for
whatever you want to call them?
I did in Washington. There was a lot of bigger pocket stuff there because of
Mm,
Brandon Turner and all of those guys. So there was a lot of like local meetups and masterminds and stuff, but nothing in Arizona. I
mm,
try to just do single family fix and flip here, but I don't invest like long term money into rentals
yeah.
here. So
Nah,
I
dude.
almost like live here, invest elsewhere.
Me
Um,
too. I
because it's a
buy
great
nothing in Florida. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's a great flipping market here, but it's just not good for rentals.
Mm,
The yield is just not there. So I
yeah.
like the Southeast. I think the
Yeah.
Southeast has just great yield, and it's hard to find that anywhere else in the nation. And the population
Maybe the
continues to
Midwest.
grow there.
Mi-
Yeah,
You probably find it in the. I checked out some states in the Midwest, but I fully agree with what you're saying. It's like
yeah,
even Florida. I won't touch Florida. I know you've had some guests on that are pretty heavy in Florida, and it's like, dude, I got enough headaches in
yeah,
my life. My life is filled with stress 24/7. A hurricane is the last thing I need to be stressed about. I have to live through it. I don't want to be worrying about my rentals. Um,
yeah,
but I buy in the Southeast, just not. I always tell people, they're like, "What's your buy box?" I'm like, Southeast, just not Florida.
yeah. Yeah,
But yeah,
it's another layer of stress. I think
it
that's
is.
why I really haven't pulled the trigger on anything in Florida too, is I just can't justify the risk, unless I'm like stealing it. I just don't have a lot of comfortability. So, but you got started out in wholesaling your first park,
Uh,
not buying.
no, no, I didn't wholesale a park. I was wholesaling and I came across them. Then
Oh,
it's
okay.
so that's kind of how I knew. And I tried buying the first one for myself. It was 26 lots in Florida. This was before I knew anything.
Yeah,
I knew nothing. And it was like the guy was 1.2 or something. There was a couple duplexes on there too, and it was in town. It was phenomenal, great deal, great income. But he sold it to somebody else, and then there was like a 100 lot one around the time I went. That was really the thing. I wanted to buy this 100 lot park. I just didn't know how. So I went to Chris Rude's thing. It was around that
mm,
same time. And anyway, I didn't get that. He sold it to somebody else. And that just started the journey. And then to kind of
yeah,
weave back, I like to weave too, but to weave all the way back to what you were asking, it's like after that I had put it out there that I wanted to buy. And I was doing some free education for some other people, and I did a webinar or two, and I mentioned it on there, and somebody, a wholesaler, heard me. He's a great friend of mine now. I mean, I owe him my entry into the business, and he called me, and we started shooting the shit. I taught. Sorry, don't know if we could swear on
oh
here,
no,
but
you're
we
good.
started chit chatting, and he's like, "Hey, man, I saw that you were, interested in a park. I got this one out in Arkansas, in Little Rock. Bro, I didn't even know where that was
Mm,
on a map. I was like, cool, I want it. I was like, I'm down, dude. And
yeah,
it was seller finance, 36 lots, all park owned. I think there's two or three that are tenant owned, but anyway,
mm,
basically park owned, sitting on 40 acres. I got 20 acres to develop. That was like 300K down, 3% interest, 7-year balloon, 6K a month payment. It was pulling in like 20 some K a month. I mean, dude, this was the guy's
it's a good
baby.
deal.
Built it himself. He walked, the type, walked me through the
Yeah,
park, brought the plans out on the back of the truck, spread them
wow.
out, and like just told me where everything was. And it was pretty cool. I mean, the wholesaler did well. 6-figure payday for him. I did well, got my first park.
Nice.
I got really lucky. I know this is a podcast for education, so I will say I did little to no due diligence. I
Mm,
did my due diligence like I would for a flip. I was, you walk in, you check it out, you're like, I can fix all this. And
yeah.
then you move on. And that's kind of how I treated it. and I got lucky. It was pure luck. Knowing what I know now and the problems I've had in my other parks and how I progressed in my due diligence,
Mm-hmm.
got really lucky. But I love
That's
that
good.
park. It's my baby. Each home's on a half an acre.
Nice.
It's gorgeous. So
Was it city water, city
that was
sewer?
city water direct bill, but on septic. And personally,
Hmm.
I love septic because coming from the flipping background that I'm at, I mean, dude, I in Florida, we're all set. Like where I'm at in Florida, septics is huge. So I was so
Yeah.
used to replacing and repairing septic lines and wells. Like private utilities don't bother me. So that didn't even
Yeah.
faze me.
Yeah. No, that's a very valid point. Same with Washington too. There's not a lot of septics here in Arizona just because of the soil.
Yeah,
But in Washington, it was very common. So
yeah.
I don't. I mean, we have two parks that are on septic, and it's not really a giant issue. You know.
It's not.
Um,
It. I might get scared. Like I think I'd get scared if it was like 100 to 1, some massive system.
yeah.
Um, but like I'm on all my parks are like 1 to 1 or 2 to 1, so
Yeah.
that doesn't faze me at all.
Nice. So, how many mobile home parks do you own right now?
So I got three currently with about
Okay.
170 lots, and then I got two under contract right now that have about another 250 lots.
Nice. So 170 lots across three purchases. That's
Yes.
good. That's really good.
So the first one I got in 2022, the second one I got in 23, and then the third one I got was in 24, and then I contracted the last two the other month. So, I took it slow as I built up everything. Trying to
Hmm.
trying to do it. A lot of travel, a lot of hands-on, very
Oh yeah.
hands-on operator. So
How are you sourcing your deals? Are you using agents, wholesalers? I mean, I know you got your first one from a wholesaler, but how are you
yeah,
sourcing the majority of your deals?
coming from so I used to like I built up a call. I had my own call center. I had my whole wholesale team. You know what I mean? So I went that route, and I didn't want to do that for this. It's not
Yeah.
fun managing that and like especially at scale to do what you need to do. And there's only 44,000 mobile home parks in the country, and it's like okay. And one
Yeah.
thing that I respect is wholesalers and brokers. So I'm a licensed broker in Florida. I had a brokerage, all that. So I was an agent when I started and everything. And I was a wholesaler. So I've been through the gambit. And I respect the work that they do if you get a good one. And
Yeah.
it's like, so my business is about contacting wholesalers and brokers. And
Mm.
I call them and I check in with them. And I'm like, and sometimes they'll be like, bro, I told you when the seller calls me back, I'll let you know. But I'll call every month or every other month if we're, trying to find something. And I
Hmm.
just build my network. At first, when I didn't really own anything, nobody would talk to me. A lot of the
Hmm.
brokers just they wouldn't talk to me. But now that I own some, they want me in their system. They want my
Yep.
buy box. So it took a little bit, but, and you get there. And so, I got a broker with a third one that I'm hoping to put under maybe later this month. We're going back and forth with the seller. That's a broker. And the other two is a wholesaler for that I
Nice.
have under contract. So like that's going direct to seller, I get it. You could get a good price, but it doesn't really matter where I get it from. If my numbers work, my numbers work, whether
Yeah.
or not it's me direct to seller or through a wholesaler or broker. I do try to go
100%.
off market. I will buy it on market, but like hopefully I can make the connection with the brokers and the wholesalers before they try putting it online.
Yeah, definitely. So is everything that you have in Arkansas?
Arkansas and Georgia.
Arkansas
So
and
I
Georgia.
got
Nice.
two in Arkansas, one in Georgia, and then the two that I have under contract, one's in Arkansas, one's in Georgia.
Nice. So you like those markets?
Yeah, and then that one I'm tackling with the broker that hopefully we get is in Alabama. So
Mm,
I
nice.
travel, so like I'll hook up the RV and like me and my son recently to do our inspections and we had to go check on our parks. We hopped in the RV and we just drove. So I'm trying to create like this path and my daughter's in college in Alabama. So I kind of create this like road down the highway and I'm like, here's where I want to buy them so I can inspect and do all my stuff and have it within this distance of
Yeah.
like that I can easily drive and spend. And I took 2 weeks and I went and I spent days at each park and I met with my managers, met with the tenants, and I'll just do that. Um, you know, so that's kind
Nice.
of how I'm trying to build the portfolios around that, where I can I can go travel and I can do all my inspections and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that pocket in the southeast. So,
Yeah.
so what do for 170, are they the majority park owned homes? Are they majority tenant owned homes? What's kind of the structure of them?
They're mostly park owned, dude. So,
Yeah.
I know. I guess it's kind of like a disadvantage because I already knew you were going to ask that because I've listened to like your show, and
Yep.
I agree with you. A lot of stuff for people that listen, it's like, so I do. There's a point where I disagree about park owned with you, and like part of it is when you're doing a lot of them, you start to recognize there's an age gap or an
Yep.
age cutoff. So like I do feel park owned. I think they get a bad rap. I think most of the people that are in this industry come from an office background. They're like, they're in
Yeah.
insurance or they were an accountant or they were something or they were a nurse or a doctor and now they're this. Yeah, I get it. Like you don't want to do the hard work. I started doing like handyman construction stuff on my homes, fixing them up myself. Like to me, that's not an issue, and the
Yeah.
return is generally better. And I find that if you budget appropriately for your rehab up front, and that's built into your multiples that you want to get your investors, and you
Mm-hmm.
rehab these things, generally the returns are a lot better. And on average, I mean, I do it every quarter for our investors where we break down a per unit repair cost and
Mm-hmm.
how many work orders we do per quarter. And dude, some of them we don't even touch. Really, it's the ACs and the roofs. And then
Yeah.
once you do them, you're then good for another 15 years and that's the majority of your cost. And now you got this asset that's going to pay you. I mean, a lot of our park owns are going for about 950. Like in Little Rock, we're doing like 950 to 1200, and then our lot rents are like 450. So I'm
That's
getting
good.
2 to 3 times the amount on a park owned
Yeah.
home, and I've already remodeled them, so they're going to be good for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true with the park owned. What I've seen so far is, there is a point of no return for some of those older mobiles. If they're in their 60s or like early to mid 70s, I mean, they're non-financeable, and
Yeah,
it's in that scenario I do believe it's better to probably sell those off cuz
yeah,
those are going to consistently take, 20 if not 30% of your rent every month in
yeah.
maintenance. And
They're horrible, those ones. Yeah.
but if you have a good 90s unit that's,
90s is the cutoff. It's like 95. You have something around
yeah,
95 and newer, dude.
keep it as a
Yeah.
park
So
owned.
like it's and so when you come in, the benefit of us when we come in as syndicators and capital raisers and stuff, we budget for everything. So you walk your units and you go, okay, this one needs, and I kind of walk through and I have like this measuring scale where I'm like anywhere from like 4K to like 15K of like
Yeah.
what I think it's going to 15 be in like a complete I gotta do this whole thing. And like I just rate them all and then I run my budget and I say, this is what I gotta raise. Now if I do that and I go in and we have a standardized material list. So I run like a standard list. So everything's the same paint, the same lights, the same, across every park. It's the same stuff. We use our Home Depot Pro account. So
Yeah.
when I buy parks, I make sure there's a Home Depot nearby too.
Yes.
And it's very standardized and we raise that capital and now all these homes are fixed up and we get the rent. Now if I go into them and they're too far gone, I'll rent to own them or sell them. So like there's
Yes.
a park right now, like the one that we're buying, I have plans to sell pretty much every one of those homes and turn it into tenant owned. It because the homes don't meet my criteria of being in the 90s, they're a lot in the 80s. And I'm like,
Mhm.
it's a great sale market. So I'm just going to rent to own all those and get rid of them and keep it as a tenant owned.
Yep.
And then the
I think that's
vacant lots, I'll infill the new homes, and then I'll keep those as park owned. Like what boggles my mind is like people they'll literally take a loss on filling in a lot and selling this home, and then just
yeah.
like I just hope to recoup my cost. Well, you just bought a brand new freaking house.
Yeah.
Everything's new. Nothing's gonna go wrong. You should own it for the first 5 years and cash flow off of that thing twice what you're going to get or 3 times what you're going to get in lot rent depending on the market, recoup a lot of your money, profit off of it, and then sell it to that person down the road. But
Mhm.
they don't want to deal with it. So we built our systems around dealing with it and making the right decision based on the asset that it is and the location that it is.
Yeah. Cuz the trade-off between the two is, the tenant owned, you definitely get a lower OPEX for that unit. But for, a park owned, I mean, in a scenario where you could potentially get 3 times the lot rent in a park owned home rent, I mean, that's a lot of revenue, and in my opinion, with market debt, with where it's at right now, where, you kind of need some park owned homes in there to boost up that rent roll and service the debt. I just like all of the tenant owned guys that have come on the podcast, they haven't purchased anything in the last 12 months for the most part because of the debt, because it's hard to justify paying, $30K a lot with $375 lot rents and putting 20 to 30% down and doing that. Like, nobody's making money in that scenario. So, I mean, I think the park owned homes, there's opportunity with it, and it gives you options and it gives you control of the deal, which I like. But yeah, I think park owned
control is huge.
Yeah.
So control is huge for me. Like, so I have a park that is all tenant owned. My one of them in Arkansas is all tenant owned, and I don't make much off of it because I bought the thing. It was $150 lot rent. I'm up to $225 now. You know what I mean? I'm inching it up, but like, yeah, I don't do anything. I get the appeal is all I'm saying. Like, I fully understand the appeal to it, but my park owned community, I have less homes than my tenant owned community and make a lot more money. And honestly, I get like 1 work order every other week, 2 work orders every other week, like 1 per week. Like, it's not a big deal. And when you have your crew, so what I was going to say was this, is like, I feel like guys who are building their business around being able to handle park-owned homes are going to be at a benefit, because once you start building those crews and you have the ability to build a team and talk to contractors, if you know that lingo and you know how to deal with them and you're able to do that, you're going to be a better advantage to buy these things and not get caught with your pants down, essentially, when you do own them. And so that was kind of my attitude coming in. I felt there was a huge lapse in the market of people respecting park-owned homes. And I also respect the tenant-owned homes, because I feel like, yes, it is easier, that is ideal. But what I think is stupid, and to me, when things don't make sense, I start to question them. How does a bank just ignore money?
Yeah.
I'm making $1,000 a month, and you're going to tell me that money doesn't exist. Now, I get it. The reason why was because before, homes were garbage. Well, up until like 5-7 years ago, well, probably 10 years at this point, or 2024, you couldn't even, banks didn't want to lend on mobile home parks. There was a lot less of them. It was really hard. Now it's not so hard. It's a lot easier. So I started looking at the trend, and I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like, at first there was a stigma, and then they didn't like them, but then they started to, because they realized how lucrative this was, and they weren't really that bad. And I looked at the homes, and I was like, yeah, I mean, barring the 1980s and 70s homes, like a park made of all those, you're telling me I bring you an all 2001, 2005 home community that's making double the amount of money, and you're going to tell me half of it doesn't exist? Yeah. And so what I started looking at was, I was like, I think over time, banks are going to start to say, wait a second, we make more money if we value the park, because they make money off of how much they lend. The park is worth more when it makes more. It makes more with park-owned home. And these things didn't add up to me, and I started to say to myself, I was like, well, banks want to make money, and this is the way they're going to make more money. And the whole reason was that homes were depreciating, but now actually mobile homes appreciate. I was like, it would make sense that over time, if not this year or next year or the year after, in 5 to 10 years, they're just going to be lending on park-owned homes. And you and I already see it, where a lot more people are lending on park-owned homes. So I know you've had guests on where they flat out be like, oh, you can't get lending. And it's like, bro, like, that's not true.
That's not the case. I mean, even since I
started, it's changing.
I've talked with, I can't tell you how many lenders I've talked with that do count park-owned home rent. Like, exactly. It's over 10. I mean, just in Alabama, because that's where we're at right now. Yep. There's 10 to 15 lenders that I've talked to that count the park-owned home rent. Now, they usually underwrite it a little bit harder with the OPEX, but they still count it. It still counts towards the debt service. And I've had some people just on that are like, yeah, nobody counts park on home rent. And I'm like, that's just not
That's
the
not true.
case. Maybe like
And,
5 years ago, but in today's
and
world, it's
yeah,
not the case.
and that's the thing is, so when I came in, I was able to look at it with fresh eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
albeit you got to respect, like, although you really have to respect the fact that tenant-owned homes is this ideal situation of like, yeah, I don't have to do any work. And I started really looking at that, and I was like, well, that makes sense because a lot of these guys really don't do the work. They don't climb under, and there's a lot that do. I call it a complete operator. So like, there's like
Mm-hmm.
this hands-on like site operator, somebody who can be in the field, like a field operator. They're out there, they're in their hand. Then I call like desk operators. They're like, they like to sit at their desks, run those tenant-owned communities. They don't go get their hands dirty. They're not fixing sewer lines themselves or doing any of that stuff. And there's like this blend of like, which type of operator are you? And then there's like the complete operator, the one that could do it all. And
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of my goal. And I looked at it and I was like, man, like if I could build a business around, I mean, I used to flip mobile homes down here. Like I'm from Polk County, so we have a lot of mobile homes, and I
Yeah.
used to flip them. I'm like, man, if I could just do what I did down here inside my parks and build my crews like I did here up there, I was like, I feel like I could buy these things, and in 5 to 10 years, we're going to be a lot better off because we'll have the crews, the homes will be in great condition, and then they'll be worth a lot more. I don't know if you've ever run the numbers on like if you value your park with lot rent plus home value
Mm-hmm.
versus complete park lot and home rent, bro, your park is worth so much more money. And
It
if I'm
is.
right, maybe I won't be right, but if I'm right, and in 5 years the lending for these things opens up, and anything with a good condition, newer model home becomes a standard thing to get a loan on. I've now
Yeah.
just multiplied my money while everyone else. There's guys out there literally giving away their homes because they don't want to deal with them.
Yeah.
You're just giving away money.
Yeah. Given away for free,
Yeah.
which is
And it's
wild.
like that. It is wild. And I get it to a point, but like, dude, just do the work.
Well, yeah, and it's not a one size fits all thing too. It's like if the home needs carpet and paint and it needs a clean out and there's some graffiti or whatever on the wall, that's fine. But
Yeah.
if you're having to replace all of the windows, having to
Yeah.
replace the roof, and it's pretty extensive and it starts to be more expensive than the actual mobile home, okay, that's when it makes sense to sell it off for $1,000 or $2,000 or give it away to a contractor for free and just pay
100%.
lot rent. But like if you're giving away like a 1987 single wide for free and it just needs a couple
Wild.
$1,000s worth of work and you can rent it for
Yeah.
$700 a month, it's just lazy, you know?
It is.
Um,
And it's not being a good steward because like as stewards of capital, as syndication raisers, like we're stewards of our investors' capital and we have to make the
yeah.
right decisions. Sometimes that means the work. And it's like being able to do not being afraid of doing the work and being able to do it. And it's like if I have to go repair something myself, like I've done that. Like if you go to my socials, like I'm out there putting mailboxes in, I'm out there cleaning
Mm,
houses, like whatever, rekeying homes, whatever it takes. Because if I'm there and I can save money by doing it. Like I'm just trying to be a good steward and giving away a home. If it's not like a dilapidated nothing, then I agree with you. It's being
yeah.
lazy. So, for example, my lot rent park. The guy called me and I got that call that everyone hopes to get. Hey, I want to sell my home. Do you want to buy it? And I was like,
Hmm.
cool. I'll have the manager go through it. And so like I have this choice. Do I buy it and RTO it or sell it? Or do I buy it and rent it? And so I got the photos of it. So I looked for a couple things. What type of roof? It's a cool seal, so that's cheap and easy. Under $1,000, I got that thing redone. I
Hmm.
looked at the AC, manufactured 2019. I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty good. And then I looked at the inside. I had him bounce around on the floors and check everything for me. Solid. Cabinets, good. Drywall,
Hmm.
good. Wallboard. I'm sorry, not drywall, wallboard. And I'm like, dude. So I'm going to offer him like 6 grand, and I'm going to rent that thing for 850. And my lot
Yeah.
rent right now, everyone's paying 225 in that park, but market over there is 400. I'm trying to get them up to market. So like I'll
Mm,
get 400 at market for that, or I'll get over double if I rent this thing out and I got a new AC, I'll cool seal the roof. I won't have any problems with this thing for a long time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what would you do? Why would I just RTO that thing to get, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's, if you can RTO something with a longer term, I think that makes sense. But if you're RTOing something and it's just a 12 or a 24-month note, I mean, you're basically agreeing to give up
money,
roughly roughly 60% of your revenue for that unit in order to save 20 to 30% in OpEx. Like it's a 100%. Net negative result.
And bro,
it's so weird.
Everyone throws that number out and it's like, I don't think that's kind of over all of the homes, yeah, but like a lot of my homes I don't touch. So like, I mean, once you start fixing it, my operating expenses go down dramatically. Like on my one park, I definitely underestimated how much work needed done. So I got it. I got bent over on that one where I was fixing homes. We had to replace like 12 AC units that I didn't look for. My DD was bad on that first park. But like, the RTO thing, I agree and disagree. Like I love rent to own stuff too, but like I find one of the reasons why I wouldn't want to do a long-term rent to own is I feel like eventually they're just going to not buy it. They're not in a buying mindset, they're in a renting mindset and it's never going to end. So like the one park that I'm buying, she actually does that. The seller did that kind of model. And I've noticed as I was going through all my DD, people were coming and going on rent to owns. And it's because like the terms are so long and stretched out and she said it herself. She's like, well, most of them never end up buying it. And I was like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of rent to own. You're just basically getting this asset back. And so then what am I getting it back like? And like, so when you run park, and I don't know your processes, right? But I've developed mine over the last like couple of years. So I've been owning park-owned homes. So my first one was 22, so over 2 years now. And it's like, we do quarterly inspections. So I just did my quarterly inspections at one park, and I had about like 10 work orders for things that they never brought up to me. Leaking sink, drippy, whatever underneath the vanity, toilet that runs, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, they never submitted work orders for these things. Mildew on the ceiling because they're not using the vent fan. Like, so we do our quarterly inspections and replace air filters and go through it. But on RTOs, I can't do that. And so maybe I can. I don't know if I can or can't. I don't know if I can or can't. That'd be intriguing. But my concern would be if I can't do that, and then 7 years later they give me this home back, and some kid named Kyle on Monster Energy drinks playing Xbox just punches holes in every one of my walls, and I get this thing back and like, dude, that's gonna be horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point because I've walked and driven a lot of parks in the last 12 months. And just from what I've seen personally, all of the tenant-owned home communities look worse than the park-owns. I don't know why. I don't know how that is. I can't really explain it, but I think it's when they own their own home, their kind of standard of respect kind of goes down a little bit. And I think when they're renting something that is somebody else's, I think there's just a different level of respect there. And I think that's an exaggeration, but I agree with the first part. No one respects my units, dude. Well, like some of them do that. Because if they know these people are smart, and if they own their own home, they know they're not going to get evicted. But if you're a terrible tenant and you got trash and you got all this stuff and you got the property manager knocking on your door, evicted. You're going to get evicted.
So I wouldn't say respect. I'm not going to say respect. I think you used the wrong word. I think fear. I think there's a healthy fear of punishment, whereas tenant-owned homes, I think lack the fear of the repercussions because they don't feel like they should fear being kicked out because what are you going to move my home? So like I hope to combat that. And I don't know, I don't have enough experience to say if I will, but I have wrote a very healthy community rule book. And then what I do is I
Mm-hmm.
keep like a little note tab type thing. And every time I see something or think of something, I write it down to add to my community rule book for the next like lease signing. Because every year when
Mm,
they re-sign their lease, I'll resend them the community rule book. And so they
right.
have to agree to it. And that thing, Ron, has helped me a couple times where I'm like, rule book, you're parking on my
Yeah,
grass, rule book, rule book. And like it's come in
that's
handy.
smart.
So I'm hoping maybe that helps. But that is one of my problems with my tenant-owned community is like, especially when you take it over and these people are grandfathered in and they don't have skirting. So now, right, well, I haven't had skirting. Well, I want you to have skirting.
Yeah,
So am I paying for the skirting? Am I putting you on like we have this thing like a home improvement program? And
yeah,
it's like, am I putting you on this and I got to pay for it and then bill you for it? Is this going to be an art? It's a very stressful thing to try to get them to do stuff for their home. So like at my one community, I power wash. And like someone like there was a couple tenant owns in that community, and I was just like, I just called them and got permission, and I was like, dude, I just want to power wash your home. Like,
mm-hmm.
can you just give me the approval? And they were like, yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. Like, thank God, because it was ugly, and I just needed the green cleaned off of it.
yeah. The moss. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's such a low cost value add to a community is
Yeah.
pressure washing because it makes it look so much better. Like it makes it look 10 times better. The appeal is incredible when that happens. What's been some of the best value adds that you've done to your communities? Like the best
Um,
ROI?
so ROI, I don't think I have. So I'm switching over to ROI financially. I will say switching into the city. I didn't do it by choice, although I did budget for it because I thought it
Mm,
was going to be an option. As soon as I bought it, the city found out I bought it, and then they all of a sudden were like, hey, by the way, we want you on city water.
mm,
And so they gave me a time frame to switch over to city water, which actually is nice because okay, I'm going to start to recoup and build back, and like it's a better quality water. So I think that's got my best ROI like financially and for the benefit of the park. But I would say curb appeal wise, like where I got the most feedback from the tenants, we spent like 15 grand, probably 18 grand or so, trimming trees, power
mm,
washing homes, and then actually another couple grand because we had to like re-asphalt some of like the what was getting washed out going down the hill and people were bottoming out. So we spent
mm.
probably close to 20 grand on those three items in one park one month, and I just did it all. And every one of the tenants called into the office on because there's two streets, so everyone on that one street, they were like, "Man, thank you for re-asphalting this. I was so sick and tired of bottoming out. So nice." And then everyone from both streets, they were just happy about the power washing. They said their homes look cleaner. The trees, people were worried about tree limbs this winter and the ice. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that one got the most calls, and then people saying how much they love living in the community. Whereas the water one, none of the tenants cared. They
No.
zero Fs. We sent out notices. I posted them on everyone's door. Hey, you're gonna get clean water. Like, hey, you're off the well. This water's gonna be phenomenal. Nobody called. Nobody cared. They're like, how much is it gonna cost me?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So there's a difference.
Very, very nice. Yeah. Those all sound like really good value adds. So,
Yeah.
what are you doing for management? So, I mean, because you're in Florida, you have
Yeah.
you have three parks in two different states. So, what are you doing for management? What does your process look like for that?
So when we take over a park, it's me. I will go fly out. I'll live in the community. So like even when I took my trip to inspect them, I took the RV and I'll just stay in the community and I get to see what it's like at night and all kinds of stuff. But initially when I buy it, wherever it's at, if I could stay there or not, I'll get a hotel, whatever it is, and I'll stay out there for a week, 2 weeks, and I'll just start transitioning everything. It's just tough because like one had a manager, the other didn't. The one without a manager, I literally had to do everything and I transition it. And then we'll get a manager. So like now we're trying to get managers in every one of our parks. Um, and that's kind of how we do it. So initially it's me going in there, handing out all the notices. I knock on the door one by one, meeting every one of the tenants, introducing myself, going through. I pass out all the late notices, eviction notices, and I'll take trips, dude. I'll be on a
Wow.
plane or I'll be driving a couple times a month if I have to. Every month I try, especially when we take it over. I'll be out there a couple times a month, every single month, if I'm not staying out there for weeks at a time. Because it's that important. Like I want to make sure things go right. The Georgia ones is like a 5 hour drive, so I'll leave at 4 a.m. I'll be up there at 9, and
Yeah.
I'll hang out all day, come home, or I'll just stay there for the week and then come back. It's really not a big deal.
Nice.
And when that one, but anyway, to keep going, and then we hire the manager. We'll find a manager, give him free rent and a pay. And then we do a hybrid system. We use Rent
Hmm.
Manager, and we'll do a
Yep.
hybrid system with them where we don't require them to do a lot. I want to run things centralized. I know some guys or some people have managers picking up materials or ordering material. Like we do everything through our pro account. Everything's ordered and systematized. So a lot of what they do is pass out notices, show homes. They're not required to write up notices. Like my office, we have an admin that'll write them up, reach out to the manager and say, hey, this person is getting a fine, go do it. Or if the manager sees something, she'll message the admin and say, here's a photo. Like, do you want to find them? Like we found, like I had somebody lifting weights in the front yard. I'm like,
Hmm.
this is not happening. And she was
Yeah.
like, what do you want to do? I'm like, we're issue them a notice. And if they don't do it, they're getting a fine. Trampolines, so they'll walk around, and if they see something, they'll send it in, and we'll tell them what to do or give them the permission to do it. Um, and then we put
Hmm.
up our own ads in the office, so the managers aren't putting up the ads, but they're connected so that way they're able to do the showings and respond to prospects and set up their own schedule for that stuff.
Nice. Okay. So you kind of do a hybrid approach,
It's a very
which
hybrid
is
approach, yeah.
basically what we do too. We use Rent Manager, um, but we want to have somebody on site to still have that on site feel, touch,
Yeah.
smell of the park. Um, so that's good. I think a lot of people are doing or switching to the hybrid approach. I think
Yeah.
the third party management is just not a good
I've
system.
never seen a good one. I've never seen a good one, dude.
No.
Like, so one of the ones I looked at I've looked at like 12 or more different parks that had a third party manager, and every
Mm,
one of them is just run down and mismanaged. And it's like, so funny story is I was going to
yeah.
go that route, and I don't know who it was. I wish I could remember. I had put it in a group, and whoever it is, I owe them a debt of gratitude. I forget who told me. Somebody was like, no, dude. Because I was like, anybody know a third party management company in Little Rock? Like, I have this thing, I need to pass it off. And someone's like, you have to do this yourself. And I was like, what? And then
Yeah.
they typed up the whole thing, and I read it, and I remember going to my wife and like, well, apparently, like, I got to manage this thing. Like, this is it. And so we took it over, and that was that. I am so glad I did. I couldn't imagine
Yeah.
how much I would have spent, because here's the thing, like I look for the cheapest stuff. I'm always looking at ways to save money. Like I said, do you think I put in mailboxes? I put in like 5 different mailboxes. I've rekeyed like dozens and dozens of homes. That would have been
Yeah.
like 100 and some bucks per rekey. You know what I mean? $150 to install a mailbox. And it adds up.
Yeah.
You think my manager was gonna go do that for me?
No. And there's
No, dude.
also there's also the like the fraud aspect to it. If you
Yeah.
have,
Oh
because
yeah.
we've looked at some communities where 50% of the tenants are paying with cash, and the guy
Mhm.
doesn't want to report it on his rent roll, and he doesn't want to show any tax returns and stuff like that. And he has a third party manager.
Did.
So it's
Oh yeah.
like you have a third party manager, they're collecting cash, they're responding to
Yeah.
all the tenants' inquiries. Their
Mhm.
husband or her husband is the maintenance guy.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, there's so many
Wait,
opportunities
where
for
is this
fraud
one?
there.
Where is that
Oh,
one?
this one's in Birmingham.
Oh, okay. Is
Yep.
that okay? I was looking. There was one sounded very similar in North Carolina. I looked at property manager. Her husband was a maintenance guy, and I was on the phone with the seller. A wholesaler brought it to me and connected me direct with the seller. Same thing. And I was like, hey
Yeah.
man, like I can't buy this. Like if I'd take it for free, but like I can't pay you anything. And
Yeah.
I went and I was like, dude, I think you need I went through the whole thing. I sent him photos. I was like, bro, like everything you told me, like, I don't think, like, when was the last time you saw this park? Because, like, I don't know where your money's going, dude. But, like,
Yeah.
you're literally, this park's dilapidated. And there's been a few like that. And it's,
Yeah.
so I think that's the best advice I ever got was real management. And so I think that's a benefit for us though. So like a lot of guys, like I just got a call with somebody wanted to buy a park that I'm looking at, wanted me to assign it to them. And they were like, hey, this guy's got a 1031 into this. And it
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of another situation when I was looking at a park where a 1031 guy had to sell it because he 1031 into it, was way over his head and needed to get rid of it. And I was like, man, like these guys hopping from one property into another, and then they're going to hire a third party manager because that's who had called me was a management person who had a buyer that they managed for that was looking for something.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that's a plus for guys like us because those things will keep coming back to the market in worse condition, and people
Yeah.
like us can come in and still get a deal on them. So like, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just never going to do it. Like more people that do it just means there's going to be more assets that need work because there's no way a third party manager is caring for and doing what needs done on a park. These things
No.
are crazy. They're crazy complex with the infrastructure, trying to map out current infrastructures that no one knows because it was developed in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
Like the piping systems, they're not going to do that work.
You have to have control. It really just comes down to control because, these people are, I mean, I've had third party managers for single family stuff, for Airbnbs, small scale, nothing, on a large park like this, but, it just comes down to control, but it also there's a quote that comes to my head. I can't remember who said it, but it's basically along the lines of, if there's opportunities for fraud in business, more than likely it's going to happen. It's like you can't, and you don't know how much fraud there's going to be, but there is going to be some. You don't know if it's definitely not 0%. It's not 100%. It's probably somewhere in the middle. Because how can you accurately verify with every single tenant that is paying cash for that month to verify that they're actually depositing it and there's no overlap in fees, and it's impossible to find. So it's like when you can mitigate all of that from the start by switching them over to Rent Manager, switching them over to auto pay, or it just alleviates so much risk.
And it amazes me that they don't. Yeah, and that they don't. Like, why would you not? Because they don't want to deal with the headache of trying to tell the people. Like, you're a professional, like, because I was a realtor and I did management and I hated it. So I know the game. You want to collect as many houses as possible in your portfolio, collect the rent, do as little bit of work. You get first month's rent. You know what I mean? Like, I get the game, and they don't want to deal with it. So why aren't you switching me to a payment system? Why aren't you putting me in this? And so many of these guys, they're collecting checks and cash. And dude, I did that. Like that park that I bought the first time, it was making like $20,000, right? Some people would mail in checks. Dude, I remember the first 2 months before the first transition, it took us 6 months to transition everybody. Now we're doing it within like a 30 to 60 day time frame, everyone's transition. But dude, for those first few months, I was flying back and forth from Little Rock with like $15,000 to $20,000 in my pocket, hoping I'm not going to get robbed. Like, I'm like, I hope nobody knows how much cash I have. Even walking down the park, because here I am, like a freaking dealer, walking door to door, collecting cash, stuffing it in my pocket. I'm like, anybody could drive down this road, hit me with a bat, and take all of this money. And I was like, this is not safe.
Like a
like,
drug
we
dealer.
Need a system. Yeah, like a dealer, bro. Like I was like, what you got, man? You got my stuff this month? Oh, come on. And
That's
it's
hilarious.
like, oh, dude. And we were in Propertyware. What were we in? I think we were in Propertyware first, and that system was horrible for mobile home parks. Oh, Yardy Breeze. We did Propertyware and Yardy Breeze. Hated them both, and then we switched into Rent Manager by our second park, and that was pretty much it. We were in Rent Manager at the end of last year.
I think I've had 10 guests, 11 guests. I think you're the 11th. I've had 11 on so far. I would say 10 out of the 11 use Rent Manager.
Yeah, you have to. You just do.
I mean,
I've tried different ones.
Yeah, and that's just that's a testament to Rent Manager. I mean, that's what we use. And we're, currently in a transition period for a park right now. So it takes a little bit to kind of get everything up and running. But, for them to pay with checks, I'm fine with that. I would prefer not, because it's not like they can't
checks
pay
are
with.
difficult for us.
I know it's not like they can't pay with a debit card or with auto pay. It's the same money out of the same account. It just takes a little bit of like workaround to say like, hey, this is how you link your routing number and your account number and do this, this, and this, versus having to physically write a check every single month. Like it's just,
and they all lie,
easier.
dude. They all lie.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Oh, I don't have a phone. I don't have this. I'm like and so we just you can leave the park. So it takes a lot. Like I've had to train our team. And so now it's like I just have a zero tolerance for a lot of stuff, and it's just like then just tell them to leave the park. Like, and you'd be surprised as soon as you do that, they're like, "Oh, my brother came over and showed me how to use this computer I happen to have for the last couple of years sitting on my desk," and we'll get them switched over. So now we're pretty quick with it. Everyone switches over. There's a way. It's kind of like back when you were wholesaling, and everyone would say, "Oh, I don't know how to DocuSign." And you had to like, hey, well, if you want this money, you need to do this. And then suddenly they had a brother or a pastor or someone that could come and help them use an email. And it's the same concept. So you just have to be stern with it. And they do it. But the cash thing is not – I wouldn't recommend that for anybody, like switching over. But we can't take checks because we use an online bank. So because our goal is scale – and I was trying to find the best systems for it, we use Relay Financial. And so that makes it really easy for us to do everything online. All of our bank accounts are with one system, and you can just add more accounts quickly online without having to go anywhere. Every time we buy a new park or something, we can easily open up a new bank account with that entity and then add in our reserve account. We have like a reserve account, operating account, a capital account, and we can just do that. It's super easy. But the problem is we can't take checks, and it's a cluster. So I think they're trying to do a way where we can scan it in. They said they were going to release a feature for that, but right now it's like I would have to have it sent to my other company, cash it, and then and that's commingling, and it's just like I'm just like, nah, dude, like I can't do this. You need to pay online.
And so you have Zego through Rent Manager. Is that the portal?
Paylease.
Paylease. Okay. Have you looked into Zego at all, or what? Why did you guys end up choosing that?
So that's not a me question. I don't handle that aspects of the park. I do not know the reason why. I know we use Paylease. I've heard the name Zego, but I'm not sure as to what the differences are or why we would use one versus the other. I don't really handle that side of stuff. I'm more of I'm the guy on site meeting people. I'm the one who orders the materials. I do all the vendor. When there's a problem, they all come to me. When there's a repair, it comes to me. When there's an issue, making the leases, like I do all that. So me and my wife run the business together. So my wife, God bless her, she can handle that stuff, and I don't have a head for it. The most important thing, dude, like you didn't ask, but I wanted to say this when it comes to management, and I wrote a couple things on this on my blog because this was a hard lesson. And accounting. I went through many different accountants, and I didn't understand accounting. I understand accounting, but I didn't understand the importance of a bookkeeper / accountant paying more for a good one. I went through many different ones, all different types, shapes, and sizes. CPAs, bookkeepers, and CPAs. I think I went through 3 and 4 or something like that of each, respectively, of each one. And man, my books on my first one were so jacked up. It was embarrassing. And I didn't send out quarterly reports. I didn't send out anything to my investors because I couldn't. I was trying to organize it, and it was just a cluster in the CPA. It was like handing a shoebox of stuff. Yeah. And then the next year it got better, and now this year, I really amped up how much we pay our bookkeeper, and she is a killer. She works for us, and it's we meet twice a week. We have all of our cash flow statements, all of our we have our reconciliation. She's sending me stuff every week so I could keep a pulse on all the cash coming in, what's that going out. Because with park-owned homes, as you know, it's a pretty cash-intensive business. So I need a cash flow budget for repairs coming through when we're using the income, if we're at a cap reserves, like if we've already spent our cap reserves on incoming repairs, like when we remodel stuff. And it's like I was flying blind for a while. So like my advice is like, yeah, you could do it yourself, but taking that load off and creating the processes for a phenomenal bookkeeper and then having a separate CPA is so important, because even when I found like my second or my third one, it was like, yeah, they were doing my books right, but they didn't have the skill to put the reports together. They weren't giving me a balance sheet and P&L. They weren't doing consolidations of all of my parks and my management. They weren't classing things separately, and like getting a cash flow statement and having them like liaise with all of our people, our admin and operations. It just wasn't happening, and now it is. So now I'm able, like what I love is I'm now able every quarter when I write my letter, I do like a qualitative quantitative thing where I'll write a letter about what I think, and then I have them put together, my office puts together the facts. Here's how much here's a P&L, but then here's a breakdown per unit cost of turnovers, how many ACs we put in, how many roofs did we do, how many work orders per unit, and to show them that investing in park-owned homes is beneficial, and like, let me show you why it is. And that first year of my first park, I couldn't do that. Not a full year, but maybe like 8 months or so. Like I couldn't do that for them. And I was writing a letter, but that was it. And then I listened to a podcast and I learned that, well, you're supposed to give people more than that. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I was like, so that's when we really got on it. But I think the accounting side of things is probably one of the most important pieces that, yes, you could do, but it should be one of the first things you hire out. Especially when you're running your own management company, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 parks, and then having a CPA that you work with to do that. So,
I mean, because when, men lie, women lie, numbers don't, basically. And so when you see the numbers, decisions start to become a lot simpler, and a lot easier to make. And that's what I found too.
And the weekly, you got to do it weekly. So I started doing it monthly, and that was cool. But then like I was overspending, and I was like, I wasn't not overspending in a bad way, but I wasn't planning my spending properly to when I could do my, for the trees or anything that you're going to do a big project. Well, when can I spend like $3,000 on power washing? When can I do this? So now we plan and we budget, and we're like, here's our budget. Here's the recurring stuff that comes out every month, and here's our cash flow. So she does it every Friday. At the end of the day, Friday, she does it over the weekend, and then by Monday night, basically, I have a cash flow in my inbox for every park and every entity that we own, and I can go through and see where all of our cash is and where everything was spent, so I know what I could do that week. And I think the weekly is the most important. Doing it monthly is cool, but I need a weekly pulse of everything. And after running like a wholesaling business, a flipping business, a brokerage, and I never did that, and I was always lacking something running the business. And now I know like you need to inspect your numbers and track them as closely as possible. So I want a cash balance every single week. And honestly, I think as we scale, I think I'm going to move to a daily cash report. I was really thinking, especially with some of this, like this big one's 188 lots. And it needs a lot of work. So I think I'm going to be doing a daily cash. So like I'm already prepping to like how we're going to do that. And we do 2 meetings a week where like we plan for accounting of like how to do that stuff. So I think that's where we're going to go as we scale larger and I have more projects going on.
Yeah. That's a good game plan. Really good game plan, and and I think,
what do you do? Do you have an accounting team, or do you have an accountant, or do you do it all yourself still?
Yeah, so I have a VA that works directly in Rent Manager and creates those reports and handles the leases and infilling information and basically doing everything internally within Rent Manager. And then
do you have a QuickBooks too, or do you just have a Rent Manager?
Just a Rent Manager. Yeah, okay. I used to have a CPA. And I have a company that does it now. I used to have an individual CPA, and then I had Anderson Business Advisors, which I highly don't recommend. And now I work with a different company, and they're amazing. Probably the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah.
But I just,
Good CPA is, yeah, they're worth it.
yeah, like I just, with the CPA situation, with the bookkeeping, I've noticed that just with my own personal experience that I didn't really get a ton of value for the money that I was spending. I actually produced better reports than my own bookkeeper and my own CPA. And it was tough because it felt like my CPA was working for the IRS and not working for me.
Yeah.
And so
I
got the wrong one, a couple wrong ones. And, so now we have a good system and, everything gets uploaded into monthly statements and then they do a yearly P&L for each of the LLCs. And I have like 9 different LLCs. So it's all very complicated and I do multiple tax planning, Zoom calls with these guys and the head tax attorney. And so it's a long process.
It is. Yeah. And as a syndicator and an operator, it's part of our job, right? Like, so what I realized was like, one of my investors had called me and said, you have a 10th of my net worth. And that really hit me. And I was like, regardless of what he's worth, it's like, dude, like that's a lot of somebody's money. Like I have like 10% of his money. And I was like, so I need to be on point with the money. You know what I mean? Like I need to be on point with the money, which is why I stress when I talk to people, everyone talks about everything else but the accounting process. So like one of the things that I learned, so like every entity has its own QuickBooks. So, and that is the tax reporting and the entity LLC. But we treat rent manager as a property manager. So I tell everyone, and it takes a lot, like I'm repeating it. It's like a thing that I say, we do not know the owners. Okay, the owners of the entity are not our business. Just like if it was someone who hired us. Rent manager is for us to manage the property only. Then, so basically, we don't keep a balance sheet. We don't know about their debts, loans, anything, right? That's all in QuickBooks, as it should be, because the entity is separate. The investor balances, partner accounts, all of that is in QuickBooks, because that's where it belongs. And then what we do is we do the property management outside. And if we need money, our management company sends a bill to the entity. The entity using QuickBooks will then pay the property manager, and then we apply it to their bank account that we hold on their operating account that we hold for them. Mm-hmm. And so we do that every month. And then every month we basically send, paper money or whatever. We basically send, okay, well, here's what you made. Here's the expenses. And then all that is transposed into QuickBooks. So it's a very clean set of books. And I didn't do that the first 2 years. And so this last year we started it, and dude, it is night and day because I made a goal. Mm-hmm. And it was like one of the things I noticed in syndications was everyone seems to accept late filings, late reporting. Mm-hmm. You got to file an extension. And that was me for 2 years. And it's like, nah, my goal is on January 15th for everything to be done. And on the 15th of every quarter, everything's done. And you have in your inbox all of your statements. You have your letter from me. You have that. So that way you may need to file an extension, but it won't be because of me. Yeah. And so we're now working towards that. So by keeping 2 sets of books and doing the translation every month from Rent Manager into QuickBooks, it's like if you hired me, you're going to need QuickBooks, right? You're going to need something. And so then every month I give you your P&L, and you or your bookkeeper has to put that into your thing because you're the owner of the property. So that's how we treat our accounting, is we look at our management company not as the same company, but as if we were a third party, and we treat it that way. So that way we don't start to like commingle things or push stuff off or just move money without, because again, like if you hired me and I need money to repair a home, I can't just go take your money. I have to send you a report and an invoice and say, here's what we're going to do. You have this reserve money. Like I need that to go do this tap into the city water. And that's what we did. There was 20 grand. We sent an invoice to the entity LLC and said, you owe us 20 grand. They wired us the 20 grand. The manager applied that to their account, and I went and I wrote a check and walked down to City Hall and paid for the water tap. And that, I think, was a huge game changer. So now I have very clean books, and I feel like I'm a much better steward of capital because of that versus where I was. And it takes a lot of time. Like you said, it's a lot of work, a lot of planning, a lot of meeting. Yeah. And, but it's also our job. So it's like I take it very seriously.
It's just part of the business. Part of the business.
Dude, it is, man.
It's like property management, accounting and and reporting with your CPAs and everything is just another aspect of the business. You can't get around it. So,
And getting the property management fee, like I had one investor ask me why I charge a 10% fee. And it's like, dude, this fee, and again, maybe it'd be different if I had like a 200 or 300 lot park. I don't know. Maybe if it was a gigantic park or something, it might be, if it was already stabilized, it'd probably be a lot different. But we're buying value add, and it's like the amount of time I put into this, that fee doesn't even begin to cover the staff and everything that we do. And it's like, that's another reason why you don't want to pass off to third party management, because you still, even if you're an operator or a GP in a syndication, there's still a lot of work you're doing. And how are you getting paid to do that? Or are you working for free? It's not really in the best interest of your limited partners to do it that way. So like, this is how we get paid, is on the management fee. And like, that's how I'm able to build a robust team and pay the good accountant and you know what I mean? And have a good CPA, and well, the CPA bill gets paid to the entity, but still, I'm the one doing the meetings and the planning and all that stuff.
So are you doing the traditional syndications or just a JV structure?
I do not. I do traditional syndications. The reason why is when I got into this, I said, I have a goal, 100 parks and 1,000 investors. And I was like, how do I get there? And I work backwards. And I was like, I need to do this the right way. And I was like, I need to learn this game in capital raising and syndication. So my first one was syndication, second, third. These two are syndications. I use the same syndication attorneys with Kim. She's phenomenal. Her and Mona, I mean, I love them. They're great to get everything done. And I like it. Although there's fees involved and you got to pay an upfront and all that, it's a very clean structure, and I love the process. And I feel like when I send it out, it's a lot different than just a JV, like I used to JV on flips and all this stuff. And when I had some rentals and someone gives you money and you're partnering and you're just signing on the LLC, or, you both have a share in an entity. I don't do the JV for this. Is that what you do, or what do you do?
Yeah. So far, just straight JVs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to keep the less cooks in the kitchen, the better. So I try to keep it really lean and mean. I'm not at the point where, we're buying institutional stuff where it's 100 plus, 200, 300 plus unit, where we have 25 investors to pull together. We're buying smaller value add deals, we're closing on 34 lots this week in Alabama, another 26 lots in the middle of January. So we're not doing giant deals, but we're trying to stack the small ones. You can still make really good money with the small ones, but
you can.
I'm curious about this though. So what is your criteria for something that you would buy? What are you underwriting, and what are you looking at in a deal that makes you go, I want to buy this, versus like wholesaling it out or something like that? What's kind of that threshold?
That's a good question. So I do have a buy box. Obviously, so I like when I designed this, obviously I told you about, like, I like to travel and stay in the park. So I built like this travel plan. I want them in a certain direction, a certain location, and I stick to that. But like on the home itself, I need to want to, like, I don't know how to say it, but like, I want to be able to go there and say, this is a good property. Whether it's ugly or not ugly, I need to say, I could do something with this. So I don't mind septics. I don't mind wells. I need to be able to handle it. That is my buy box. Like if I walk into a park and I can't do it, then I won't buy it. So what do I mean by that? It's like I have a set of skills and I need to buy things that are within my skill set. So, and my skill set isn't buying a 300 lot stabilized community. Like that's a waste of my talent. And I come from a background of fixing up things and replacing sewer lines and septics and wells and drilling well. Like that's who I am. So that's kind of what I look for. So when someone tells me they got park owned homes, I'm like, oh yeah, dude, like tell me more. And they're like, it's on a septic. Perfect. I'm like, don't tease me, bro. Like what else you got? And so that's kind of it. And then I need to go visit the community. And then when I'm there, I'll know pretty quick whether I can touch this or not.
Yeah.
Now, I also run like a hub and spoke. So like I will buy, once I buy one park, I want it to be big, especially if I have to travel. So, like Little Rock, that 30 lot park or 36, that was just my first one. I literally would have bought, bro, you could have
bought
sold
anything.
me anything at that point, dude. Like you could have sold me a 10 lot park in the middle of the hood. I would have bought it just because I needed in. It was like I was an addict and I needed in. I spent 2 years from 2020, the end of, about a year and a half. I spent about a year and a half looking for a park. And at that point, I was like direct to seller. I was calling people, calling wholesalers, bro, trying to find that first park until my man Tyler hooked me up with my first one. But like hub and spoke is like, I'll buy something of a decent size, and then anything within that radius, I will pick up if it's 20, 30, 50, as long as I can use my crews, because as you know, from a flipper, it is hard to find handymen, plumbers, and there's a couple things you have to be. You have to be a quick payer. You have to talk the lingo, and you have to be no bullshit when you're dealing with these guys. They don't want to be run around a corporate rigmarole with all this. They don't want somebody who just doesn't understand anything about the system or the process of what it is. If it's a road guy, a septic guy, or whatever, they want to deal with that, and they want to know that they're going to get paid. And so, like, once you build that trust with them, I want to utilize them for stuff. So, like, on this Georgia one that I'm under, dude, my other park's 30 minutes away. I got into some shit on DD with this. I picked up the phone, and I was like, hey, his name's Andrew. I was like, Andrew, I need you to go buy this park, and I need you to do something for me. And, dude, he's made so much money with me. He was like, what do you need? He went out there, dude. I had to test, like, this pond for sewage, all this stuff. He ran a test for me with his people. Like, he went down to his county and his city and did a test for me to tell me what was in the pond. And it was just like I was able to use my crews from another one. And there was a couple other guys I called to kind of drive over there. And one guy actually lived in that town. And I was like, hey, man, can you go check this out for me? And so I was able to move a lot faster. And now when I'm doing my DD, I could get my quotes faster. I already know my costs. So like I know what my lawn cost is going to be. I know what my cleanup's going to be. I know how much it's going to cost me to demo homes because he demoed 5 of them at my other park. I know how much my tree cost is going to be. It's so much easier for me now when you hub and spoke. So like that's also something that I take into consideration. So yeah, I would buy a 25 lotter or a 30 lotter if it's around my 60 or my 100 plus lot park, because I can use those people now. And it makes my life easier, and I don't have to start from scratch. And starting from scratch, building a crew, which is why I think a lot of people, operators, don't want park own, because they don't know how to build that crew. Because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and they all tell these horror stories about getting taken advantage of. And I'm like, yeah, I get taken advantage of too. I've been taken advantage of on many flips and stuff, but you learn. And so I feel like flipping has definitely led me to be able to build crews in mobile home parks a lot better than if I came into it from an office background and I'm calling some dude who's literally climbing under mobiles all day and I don't know anything about it. And now when I get on the phone, I guess it's just me saying this, but I feel like they're like, okay, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. He's using the right terms, lingo. He's done this before. I meet him out at the park. I look like them. I dress like them. Like, I'm ready to climb with you, bro. Like, let's get under this thing and let's figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it, man. I mean, I think that kind of answered your question. I will not buy, probably because I'm scared of them and I don't have the money to do it. I don't have the balance sheet or the liquid reserves. Wastewater treatment plant.
Yes.
I heard of a story of a guy had to spend $500,000 because his plant collapsed on him, or his treatment plant didn't work. And that story alone scared me. And I was like, I never want that to happen. So there it goes. Like my skill, I have no skill in that. I have no skill set in lagoons. I'm starting to learn about lagoons, but like still not really. They don't scare me as much. Maybe I do it, but honestly, like septics, I love. Wells, I can do. But wastewater treatment plants scare the living daylights out of me.
That and flood zones are my two things.
That's why I don't.
That's
why I don't buy in Florida, dude. Like,
everything's in a flood zone. But I would not.
The entire state,
the entire state. And if it's not in a flood zone, it's going to be in a flood zone with the next hurricane or whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
So So, tell me about 2025. What are you looking forward to next year? What do you got in the horizon? What's your goals and game plans for the next year?
So right now, I am mastering the game of capital raising. So I am using the skills that I used in wholesaling of Facebook ads, marketing, funnels, lead magnets, all those things that you had to do because wholesaling is all about generating leads. I have
Yeah.
yet to use that skill because, as you know, I'm sure with the JV model, you're doing it probably because you have a pretty good network and guys know, like, and trust you. So getting money for the size parks you're buying probably isn't a huge thing because you just have connections because of the business that you've run.
Yeah.
But now I'm at a point where I'm buying $4 million, $5 million parks, 2, 3 million. I'm out of the my other one was like 1.3, 1.6, and like 500, and very easy to raise that money with the capital reserves. I have friends, family type of thing,
Yeah.
business guys that I knew. Now I'm in a different game. So 2025 for me is all about capital raising, building my investor base, and trying to triple my size. And it's like I spent the first 2.5 years since 2022, right? So it's been over 2 years now from when I bought the first one to today. And I built my team. I've built my processes. I have my leases. I have lawyers in every state to draw up whatever documents. You know what I mean? Like, I built my back end and I built my processes and my team, my accounting. I have a great core system of team and employees that can help. Whereas I feel like if I scaled in 22 or 23, I would have been scrambling and not really utilizing my investors' money correctly. But
Mm-hmm.
now I feel like I know I have like this system and foundation. I have this I call it $1 billion foundation. I have $1 billion foundation that's going to allow me to scale. So 2025 is about scaling. So I have the two that are going to close in 2025. I have, if I move forward on them, and then I have the third one. If I get it and move forward, that'll be a third one. That's a 100 lotter. And my goal is to just keep on going
Mm-hmm.
through the year. I plan on spacing them out every 3 months or so. And I hope as I get better and build a better team, because I have to scale my team too, I'll be able to condense the buy in between, the period in between buying them. I call it a transition period. I hope to condense that because I'll be able to have more help doing the transition on each park. But I try to be very conservative with my time and when we're buying them and how many, to make sure that we onboard and transition at a good, without mistakes.
Mm-hmm. That's
In
awesome.
Alabama, dude, I looked at this park in Alabama. Um, I don't know. It's in Montgomery, and
Mm-hmm.
it's nice, dude. It was nice. It was right next to the military base. But like
Mm.
the dude who had it, he was out of California, and it's just like it was way
Airbase.
overpriced for what it was. Yeah,
Airbase estates.
airbase,
Yep. Yeah.
airbase. Dude, that guy's out of
Yeah.
his mind. and
Yeah.
and the city's not really a fan of parks over there. And it's like I would love that park next to that military base, but like, and I love Montgomery, so my daughter's in Auburn, and I have to visit her, and then you have to
Yep.
drive through Montgomery and Birmingham to get up to Arkansas, and I'm like, man, so I was really in to Montgomery, like this is, you know, I would love
Yeah.
it, but the guy's on, he's
That's where
you
my
well
first.
you know the
That's where my
like
first park is Montgomery.
so did you look at this park though,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah. I
airbase
got
one?
this. I got
Did
this
you?
park about a year ago. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's just got a lot of problems, and there's been a couple different
Yeah.
brokers that have tried to sell it, and
I
it's
had a wholesaler bring it to me. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's passed through a lot of different hands, and
It's a bicycle, bro. It's a
yeah,
bicycle.
I just don't want to be the next guy that buys something like that, but it's literally right down the street from my park there, so I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with it, very very familiar with it.
So, although I'm not, I don't, that guy would have to drastically lower his pricing to make up for what issues that park has. And although
Yeah.
I'd love to buy it, I don't think I'm gonna go back to that one. But I am looking for, I would love to expand into Alabama. And this third one's in Alabama, small town
Yeah.
outside of Huntsville Metro, which is nice. But
Okay.
I'd really love to be able to expand into the Birmingham or Montgomery type of area so I could complete my highway. What is that,
Yeah.
off 85? So kind of going
Yeah.
off 85.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of deals in Alabama. I mean, in August, we wholesaled 3 mobile home parks in Alabama. So, we have a lot of connections there. I have a couple deals right now. If you want to,
Let me know.
I'll send them after this.
Are they? Yeah, send
But
them
yeah,
after it. If they're of size, so like when I go into a state, so that one that I'm getting in near Huntsville, outside of Huntsville, it's not near, it's like 30 minutes out, but it's 100
yeah,
lots, 50% occupancy. And so like you said, what kind of makes you want to buy it? You know, what has you say, oh, I want to buy it? And I looked at it and I was like, the guy developed it, he built it, he knows everything. Yeah, it's 50% occupancy, but it's pretty organized. The lots are developed and laid out. And I know I can kind of do my thing. He's got a lot of vacant homes. I didn't mention that, but I love vacant homes because I know I can fix them up or rent to own them. And if I can work that in my budget, when I do my capital raise and I run my
yeah,
numbers, like I'll budget 10 to 15 per vacant. And if all that works out and my return for my investors is there, then I'm like, okay. But if I can't rehab those units and make it make sense on a budget, like then I can't buy it. So,
yeah.
but
That makes sense.
yeah, send me what you got if they're a decent
Yeah,
size. I would just need something like when I go into a state, I want it to be like 50 lots or above because I feel like at that, it's worth the time to hub and spoke. Because once I get
yeah,
something of decent size, then I can start looking at the little ones and build a decent portfolio.
yep. That's awesome.
What's your end game though? Like, are you selling or are you holding for forever?
I think personally probably just holding until it's at the end of its life cycle. You know, because money's got to flow constantly. You know, there's people out there that have bought rentals 40, 50 years ago and it's been paid off. And, you know, I get that whole game. But money also has to flow. And there's a velocity of money that I think, you know, and it also lines up with the not the 1031, but the cost segregation schedule. You know, after you've met your full cost segregation schedule, I mean, you kind of have to 1031 into another deal, or else you're going to pay a 30% tax bill, you know, if not higher.
Yeah.
So I think every deal has a lifespan or a life cycle. And, you know, I think I'll probably sell in 1031 a portion of my portfolio once that life cycle's up, you know. So
Yeah.
I would say probably 5 to 8 years, somewhere in that.
I gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
What's your goal? Like, do you have a master goal of what you're trying to reach? Let's say, like, how old are you?
29.
Perfect. So like,
Yeah.
you're 30, right? So like, let's say like when you're my age, 40 or 50, what do you want your portfolio to look like?
Honestly,
How big? What's your goal?
I don't have a certain number. I look at, you know, what is that cash flow per month? You know, I really want to, I mean, honestly, what I would love to do is I would love to buy a big portfolio, continue to raise capital, buy good deals, sell half of it, take the proceeds, and then pay off the other half. I would love to do that. There's a couple of guys locally here in Phoenix that have done that on large single family portfolios, and they're extremely wealthy. And I think it's kind of a cool move. So I don't want to be super leveraged. You know, I think as I get older, I tend to want to have less risk and not be as leveraged. So I think, you know, buying the right deals, having the right capital structure is very important. And just in being very picky and choosy about the deals that I buy, not just buy everything, raise the 20 to 30%, get debt. I'm very picky and choosy with my deals. So I just want to kind of continue that. But I mean, in the next couple of years, I mean, we'll probably be at 1,000 units. I think that's pretty conservative to say that. But yeah, I don't have a certain number in mind. I just want to be stacked correctly on the deal and operate them well. That's really all I care about.
I dig it.
So
I dig that.
Yeah, man. Well, cool, dude.
I mean,
well, thank you for hopping on.
Definitely, dude. This was a good chat.
Yeah, shared your story and got to know you a little bit better, and Who knows? Maybe we'll do a
Yeah,
wholesale deal together.
I know, dude. I would
Yeah.
love to look at the parks that you got out there. Alabama, I love this. Alabama's doing some good stuff, dude. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people, and so is Arkansas and Georgia, business wise. Like, part of our job is to look at, you know, everyone says bestplaces.net. You go there and do that. But dude, I do like a full on search, and I want to get with the city. What's their plan to like bring businesses in? And you really start looking at some of these states, and like they're really business friendly,
Yeah.
manufacturing friendly. And like, so that's one of the things I do look for is like how many manufacturing plants are around? Because that's who lives in our communities, right? We don't have doctors living in our communities. We
Yeah.
have like janitors and, staff, service employees, and a lot of plant manufacturing facility and
Yeah.
agriculture people. And it's like, in Alabama has a lot of defense sector manufacturing there. Arkansas has a lot of like plane and manufacturing stuff, and both of those states are huge in agriculture. And Georgia's so business friendly. And
Yeah.
it's like I think Alabama. So Georgia really has done a lot in the last 10 years to bring a lot of manufacturing and business into the state. And I think Alabama is is where Georgia was like 12, 15 years ago. And I think over the next 10 years, I think
Yeah.
they're positioning themselves to be very good to bring in because they have three huge metros: Huntsville, Birmingham, and Montgomery. And
Yeah.
I think they're going to be poised in the way these areas are really trying to bring in outside plants for the manufacturing industry. I think it's going to be very beneficial for guys like us to provide that affordable housing.
Yeah.
And I know we didn't talk about affordable housing, but that's a huge thing for what we do is to
It's
provide that for
demand.
those people. It is, dude. Like apartments are so much. The average apartment is like what, 1,700, 1,800 bucks a month. Even
Yeah.
in these areas, like, dude, my one in Georgia, 2 bedroom apartments are going for like 1,200 to 1,500 bucks, and I'm renting out 3 bedroom mobiles for $850, $900.
Hmm.
It's like, tell me
Yeah.
it's
I
not
mean,
affordable. You know what I
there's
mean?
luxury condos here in Phoenix that are, 2 bed that are going for $3,900 a month. You know,
That is,
um, but there's a lot of
it's
supply here.
wild. I can imagine
Yeah.
there. I mean, the same where I'm at in Florida down here, new developments going up, apartments. But in these areas like Alabama and stuff, people can't, like in Georgia, like people can't afford $1,500 when you're working at, the local, rubber factory or whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
uh, trying to find sub 1,000 lots. My double wides that are 1,600 square feet in Little Rock, I'm renting out for 1,200 bucks. I mean, you're talking 1,600 square feet, 3, 4 bedroom homes, renting around 1,000 to 1,200 bucks.
Yeah.
And if
That's
you
good.
go in Little Rock and look at that, yeah, you're spending like 2 grand. Like it's insane. Where else are you going to get that other than a mobile park? The only other thing that I think could compete with us, and it's is RV parks.
Hmm.
I think RV parks provide a different level of affordability. I don't know if you're looking at them, but like, well, there's a huge trend of families saying, let's live in a toy hauler or a big RV, 45 footer, travel. We'll go live here. Husband's working at the plant. They live in this RV park for like 450 a month. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they bring their home with them. And we have a lot of guys. One of my parks has an RV side to it. And that's what we get. A lot of these guys who have these jobs and they bring their RVs and their families and they park at our park and they do 1, 3, 6 month jobs or whatever, and then they move on to where the next, especially like fiber line guys and like linemen and
Hmm.
stuff, when they're doing big development jobs on highways and roads, they'll come in for like 3 month projects and then they move on and they'll come back again, and we get those. So I think RVs and mobile homes are those affordable housing pieces, and that's kind of what I enjoy about it, is like being able to provide that to people. I
Yeah.
know I
I
mean,
think
I need
that's,
it. Like when
yeah,
I was young, I needed that. Like I couldn't afford
100%.
1,500 bucks, but then again, back when I was young, you were getting a part. I was renting a whole townhouse for like 900 bucks back when I was back in my 20s. You can't get that
Yeah.
anymore.
So,
So,
where can people
but yeah.
find you on social media if they
Um,
want to reach out to you?
I'm at MHP Operator. You can go to my blog, themhpoperator.com. All my socials are on there. And you can kind of find me through that. I write a weekly blog news article about passive income and operations, and yeah, all my social links are on my blog. But you can find me on all social platforms from TikTok to LinkedIn, Instagram at MHP Operator.